Welcome, George. Those just joining, yeah, we're just going to give it a couple of minutes and we'll get started. So, I mean, obviously, a lot of you were probably here for yesterday's live session, all about adaptive cards. So we're going to be kind of continuing from where we left off yesterday, experimenting with a little bit more. Joined here by John. It's just popped in the camera as
Hello.
well.
Oh, look at the state of me. It's windy outside and I've got too much hair. It's blowing everywhere.
Is that what we're blaming
before these things? You are.
Is that what we're blaming it on?
It is, yeah, definitely. Not tardiness. It's not tardiness at all. I've just sorted your live stream out, Connor, so we are now currently streaming to YouTube, where this will be technically recorded, although it's not.
Awesome stuff. So yeah, we'll get into that in just a moment. I can see people are still joining. So if you're joining for the first time, welcome. Hopefully you enjoy the antics that me and John get up to as we're trying to figure stuff out. Always tends to be quite a fun time for both me and John. Hopefully you guys learn a lot as we learn too. So it's great to share our learning processes with you guys as well. Feel free to say hello in chat. Let us know where you're from. Where are you joining us from? Where are you joining us from, John?
I'm joining you from Leeds, Connor, via the power of the internet. Lovely Leeds, where it's currently not raining, which is good. Sunny Florida.
Yeah, I feel like the weather here in the UK has got a bit pants over the last couple of weeks. It's supposed to be summer.
Yeah, it's the only way to describe it, Connor. It's my two boys have just finished school today, and for the summer, and one of them came home and says it doesn't feel like the end of school because it's raining. It's naff. Last year it was all sunny and we were able to just run around in the fields and stuff. And I'm with him. Yeah, it's very miserable at the moment.
Run around in the fields. Well, kids don't do that anymore. They just sit there on their phones constantly.
Well, my eldest doesn't. He wants to get on his mountain bike and go mountain biking. There's some local trails, which is great. I'm really pleased by that. But he will do. It's just maybe not today because he came home looking like a drowned rat because it had been raining. Limerick. Cool.
It's got Ireland, New Jersey, Florida.
It's an international group, isn't it? It's good.
We've got a bit of a crowd today, so I think if you're ready, John, we will get started.
Let's do it.
So as John mentioned, for those that just joining as well, we are broadcasting this to YouTube. But don't worry, none of your faces or names or anything like that or comments will be shared on YouTube. It's just for the purpose of reaching out to a wider audience and also giving us a place to store some of these sessions on demand as well if you do want to revisit them afterwards. Yeah, so don't be afraid to kind of pipe up in chat if you need to. If you need to ask any questions, all of the comments inside of today's session are contained within our Teams call. So yeah, today we're going to be kind of continuing on. Is it continuing off or continuing on from where we left off? Continuing off from where we left off.
Come on. It's Friday afternoon, Colin. Continuing on from where we left off. I think that's correct. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Like it.
Continuing on from where we left off yesterday. So for those that weren't here yesterday, you basically saw me and John having a bit of an experiment using adaptive cards. So we had a watch party on Monday where which John hosted, which is basically more of a learning process around adaptive cards and how to really start kind of implementing them into your flows. And then basically what we did yesterday is we did a bit of exploration into Power Automate and setting up our own adaptive cards, understanding some of the kind of what appeared to be initially as quite complex JSON, but I think we managed to wrap our heads around it, and hopefully you lot did too. But yeah, I think today, I mean, we had an interesting scenario that came up from Natalie Thurley. I'm not sure if she's in the in today's call. I'm just looking through the through today's participants. Maybe she'll join.
Yes,
she is.
Yeah. Hello,
So yeah,
Natalie.
Natalie, I might ask you for a few. I might ask you for some details about your scenario in a little bit, because I think what we're going to attempt to do today is try and build out your scenario using those adaptive cards. So obviously we're not going to have all the data that sits behind that kind of sickness form that you was on about. I mean, maybe we could quickly rustle up something um, similar to that. But I think the idea of this is really to kind of get that adaptive card out to that person that was seeking to come back to work, so we can arrange that discussion that you had there. So just for anyone that hasn't seen that highlighted message, I'm just going to quickly read out the kind of scenario that Natalie came up with, and we're going to see if we can implement that today. So she said the scenario is that the employee completes a self-certification sickness form. Responses are stored in a list in a HR team. Then we want the approver to arrange a return to work discussion and then answer 2 questions before approving. With out of the box approvals, there is only 1 comments box, so we couldn't do it. So yeah, we're going to try and solve this. If it's even possible. We haven't actually tried that yet, so it's going to be interesting to see if we can do this on a live stream. So obviously, yeah, I've got John here with me today, same as yesterday. We're going to kind of bounce, hopefully, ideas off each other to see kind of what we come up with. I mean, I'm going to probably start this off with a kind of brand new flow, and we can kind of see where we would go from there. So, I mean, John, what are your thoughts? Do you reckon we should create a form just so we have some form of getting some responses back from that form, which we could maybe pass into an adaptive card? Like, what are your thoughts? Where would you start with this as a baseline scenario?
Simple, quick stuff. The things that come to my head are data entry. So we could obviously use a Power Virtual Agent, but that's probably a bit of a faff in Teams today. So forms is the quickest. Maybe we make sure the form gets put into a SharePoint list. So data, I'm thinking we'll just need to decide what data we need. And then, yeah, the act of having multiple types of input and then multiple interactions, and that's where the adaptive cards could come in. That's probably the key for me. So that's the more complicated bit. But yeah, I think the form is perfectly good. Would you like me to are you gonna try and set up a form?
Yes, so
Okay.
I'll go through a bit of a form setup in just a second. So yeah, I think what we'll do is, for now, I think we're gonna kind of just push the list to one side, because I feel like the whole process of setting up data is
don't need that, do we, for this?
bit too much for this live session. So what we'll do is, I think I'm just trying to run through the kind of journey of the user going through this flow and what they would need. So we're going to have a form which is going to be a return to work form. And on submission of that return to work form, we're going to trigger an approval process. Now, I think that we can use the split version of the approval process there, where we can start an approval, then perform some other actions, and then wait for the response to come back. I think would probably be the easiest way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just thinking, yeah. So it doesn't matter what the use case really, does it? So it's a form that someone puts some details in, and let's classify that as, let's just say I'm putting a type of illness in and a date and a reason, and that's all my form is. And then, yeah, to your point, that's what I had in my head yesterday, was we put something between the start and wait for an approval and then the approval node itself. See how that behaves. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how that'll work, if I'm honest with you. So that's going to be the interesting learning bit for me.
So let's just get some information into a form. So return to work. See what recommended. It's not very useful, is it?
No, I find the AI suggestions a little bit awkward. They run off the title, it seems. So when you put your title in, it will automatically generate some potential options of questions for you, which is probably quite quick for certain scenarios. Like if you typed sickness form, something like that, I wonder whether it'll give you something more meaningful. I don't know, because it's going off the words that you've put.
Let's have a look, see what we get.
Yeah, so it recognises about a person.
Okay, so we got some interesting things here.
Yeah, it's all very contextual based upon the words you've actually put in the title there.
Okay, so I mean, from a form, do we get the user as part of the submission, or do we need to include a do we need to include that as one of the form questions?
I would suggest, so again, for me, I would be a little bit confused about this use case. Just going back to what Natalie was suggesting,
Okay.
if it's a self-certification form, it's me saying, I am poorly, and here's some details, I believe. That's what I would be thinking. So if we were to trim it to that, then I just need, I wouldn't imagine I would have to put my own data into it, because what
Okay.
I'm going to suggest is that the form in itself will understand who I am and we'll access some of that data and we can use it for the approval. So I would just be saying, give me some dates. You mentioned this yesterday, which I think is a really important process step in anything like this, is go the simplest. So why don't we just get like 2 bits of data or 1 bit of data across and see how that goes?
Okay, so we could say, are you ready to return to work?
Okay, yeah, could do. Yeah, you ready to return to work?
Okay, so
let's just quickly have a look in the comments.
And we could say yes and no for that. And I think we'll just go with one more for now. And we can add a date here. And we can just say, which date would you like to return to work on? And then we've got an input there as well. Okay, so we've got a form that has saved. So let's go and create a new flow. So we can make this automated based on the response of that that form. So we got this when a new response is submitted. We give this a flow name, and we could call this.
What's interesting there, Connor, as you type, is that I don't know whether there's any level of context taking place, but the fact that it's popped that the form at the top of your list is
that has always been at the top of the list.
Always been at the top, is it? Maybe
Yes.
It's like the most common use case.
So yeah, when a new response is submitted, and then when items are created or modified, are usually the top 2 use cases for Power Automate.
Yeah, cool.
So we're going to go with return to work approvals, the name, when a new response is submitted. So we'll probably have to go and choose our form ID. And let's see if we've got anything that comes back from this. What do we call it? We call it the return to work sickness form.
Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, George just confirmed actually, Connor, which what I think is that because it's in our organization, we've got it's got the context of whoever's filled that in from Active Directory effectively, or off. It's probably a group that it's got me from. But yeah, it will have us.
Awesome. So yeah, if that was external, then you wouldn't be able to retrieve that person's name. I wonder if there's anything that you could retrieve, maybe their email or anything like that, maybe, or if it would be something that you would just have to include in the form if you wanted to capture that.
Yeah, you would. So we've done this before where we've done anonymous filling in of a form. We can give that form link to anybody, but we have to manually capture. We say, if you're happy to, please provide your email. And so people will give us the email and we'll just capture it that way. So yeah, if you wanted to go anonymous, you wouldn't have any concept of who that person is.
Okay, so yeah, my next natural kind of thought now is obviously we need to do something with this information. So we've got our trigger. Would you think that the next step would be to create the approval process, or would you create an adaptive card first? Because surely, I'm just trying to think back to, I'm just going to take a look at Natalie's scenario again, just to kind of get my brain ticking. So responses are stored. So we're not going to store them for now. They are just in the form for now. Then we want an approver to arrange a return to work discussion.
Yeah, so what you could do,
So
yeah, sorry, go on. I have some thoughts.
yeah, go on, tell us your thoughts, John.
So the form has been lodged. The approval is a thing that just needs, so if I've understood this correctly, we now want an interaction to take place. The form has been lodged. We could, if we choose to, send a message off in Teams to the let's say the manager of that person, or a person we determine to be the interviewer, to say, hey, you've got a new submission, someone's ready to come back to work. And then the next step, I think, would be, let's start the adaptive card process, perhaps. And it could be send an adaptive card to the person to say, we just need to capture a few bits of information. When would you like your interview? Is there anything we need to know in advance? And then maybe we send off a calendar invite. And it's sort of at the end of all of that, actually, I'm rethinking our assertion that we start an approval and wait. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe that would just be a single action at the end of it. I don't know what Natalie's thoughts on that process might be, whether there's a reason we'd want to start the approval first, or just wait till all the stuff's been done.
So let me just get this right. So what your suggestion is there then is, once the response comes through, we then send that person who's created the form response an adaptive card to get some more information off them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So really exactly what we did yesterday. So yeah, it's being confirmed in the chat. So really all we're doing is a sequence of adaptive cards that result in some level of approval process. I would guess the challenge would be the time between adaptive cards being given to someone and being received. You want to wait for that, of course. When the last one comes back, you then want to create a gap for whatever action it is that you just teed up before you tee up the approve this. We've done all the right stuff. And it's that bit that I'm less sure of. But yeah, I think we could just do a linear process with adaptive cards.
Yeah, I mean, my mind is playing the simple game right now, and it's saying, why wouldn't we put these questions directly on the form in the first place if that was the case? But just for argument's sake, we will create an adaptive card, because obviously that is the theme of today's live session.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we will look for.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Just to answer that question in my own mind, if I got imaginative, I might say that again. I'm seeing this slightly differently to you, but that's fine. I would potentially. So the questions for the approver to answer rather than the. So these might be like private questions. Okay.
So what sort of questions are you looking at here, Natalie? Just so I can kind of wrap my head around your the solution that you're trying to solve. What are the questions that you're going to ask the approver?
Ah, cool. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that makes much more sense. Because I was just thinking then, like, what questions would we need to be asking here? So yeah. Are there any adjustments we need to make in order to help you return to work?
So a form's come in. I'm just going to think this through then out loud. A form's come in. We have notification about that form as the approver. We don't need to do anything necessarily at that point. There'll be a process where a meeting has taken place, and it's after that we've got a different set of questions being fired out to the approver before we update a SharePoint list effectively with some data. That's how I would envisage this.
I'm still a little confused about the scenario, because are there any adjustments we need to make in order to help you return to work? That is, to me, a question that the approver is sending to the person coming back to work, right?
I think sometimes
it's not the other way around.
Well, no, sometimes it is the responsibility of the so here's a great example. We have these things called DSE, desktop safety assessments, I think they are, in the UK. So a person will go along and basically analyze the way someone's sitting at their desk, and it's the responsibility of the employer to make adjustments. So that question's all about, okay, in my professional judgment as a somebody who's looking after other people at work, do I believe that we as a business need to make some adaptations for this person before they return to work? because the person may not always know that. It may be the person is simply telling you the symptoms, and we as employers have to recognise that we have a legal duty to take action.
So that question there, as are there any adjustments we need to make in order to help you return to work, is more of a, are there any adjustments we need to make in order to help this employee return to work? And
Yes.
it's then talking, okay, that it's starting to clear things up in my head. So I've never really built anything like this. So okay.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a conversation involving three parties. Then in my head, it is the person initiating the conversation via form. It is then a conversation with the assessor and that person as the actor, and via and then it is the assessor receiving an automatic adaptive card which says, is there anything that the organization needs to do, which will then go to the organization. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and post an adaptive card, and we can wait for a response. So again, we can post this as the Flowbot, and we can post this in. We could do this as a group chat or chat with the Flowbot.
Keeping it simple, we should. I'd probably just, you see, what I'd be really wanting here is to post it to a particular person, if that makes sense. Yeah, channel's interesting. I mean, okay, so maybe keeping it simple, maybe there is a channel in which the assessor lives, for example, along with HR. They could live there.
With channel, it can either go into a team or channel. But if you wanted to send this directly to the assessor, if you like, then we could do chat with Flowbot, and then the assessor would become the recipient.
Yeah, because then the end result, as we've just had confirmed in chat, is we could send some data off to the HR team's channel, the HR team's SharePoint list, whatever we choose to do.
Okay, so for argument's sake, I'm going to put my email in here. So I am the recipient of this adaptive card. And then we can go back to, let's go and find our adaptivecards.io, and we can try and build this based upon, we can actually have a go at using this designer now, and see if we can use this to create it. So, I mean, what do we need in the designer? I mean, we've got
the question title would be adjustments. Is there a requirement for an adjustment? Yes, no. And what does it look like, for example?
Okay. So I'm just trying to see what's going on here, because this is a new interface that we didn't really look at too much yesterday. So we're going to see how we can build this in here. So we got obviously a list of things that sit as part of this adaptive card here, and we can remove or add things. So I think we could use this. In fact, let's do this as a Microsoft Teams one, so we can see exactly how it's going to look. So yeah, we could say, so for under the person that we've got here, that is the creator name. So yeah, we could pass in. I wonder if we can actually. Okay, like I say, we'll keep things simple. I'm going to go ahead and remove stuff that we don't want for now, because we need to really do get some input from the user. So under the title, we can say, I'm assuming we can just hard write this in here. What would the title of this adaptive card be, John?
Let's just call it Return to Work Adjustments.
Return to work.
So it's a question that the assessor's being asked after having received the form.
Okay, and then we could say, are there any
You know what I'd probably do? Would I? I don't know. I'm just thinking about this out loud. You carry on to build that. This would be just a simple question as to whether there needs to be an adjustment and maybe some data. But in my head, I'm wondering, as a flow, someone's entered some data into a form. Would I want to then present the assessor that form within an adaptive card, or is there a better way to present the form data to the assessor? Because really, they've not any indication that anything's happened at this point other than Power Automate's woken up and sent them this adaptive card.
So yeah, we could go and change how that data that goes in looks if you want to, inside of that form. If you're talking about dynamic content, just bear in mind we're using the designer here, which doesn't know anything about any of the data that sits in the flow. So we can pass that in afterwards.
Yes, yeah, I think you're right there, Connor. I think when we go back to the flow, to do this for real, you'd want to do some level of interaction first. But yeah, for now, let's just keep it simple and build the card, Jason.
Okay, so I'm not sure what this is. It's a fact set. So I don't want that. We're going to get rid of these buttons because we can just add things to this.
Yeah.
So what are obviously the questions that we need? So are there any adjustments that need to be made? You said there was 2 questions, Natalie. So what was the second question? Just trying to think of the type of data that we need to be able to put in here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Was this a recurrence of previous? Okay, so we need a yes or no, and which is obviously a choice set. And we need to make a note of any adjustments. So we're going to have an input text, I believe, for the first one. Now, do we need to add the question? The placeholder text is, we could say, please write, that's not how you spell right, write any adjustments.
It'll do, it's phonetically correct.
Need to
phonetically, yeah,
be made. Okay, and the other one was obviously a choice set. So we can just go and grab a choice set here, I believe. And we can make the responses. We've got choice one. I believe one of these is going to be the ID and one is going to be the value, but I'm not sure which one is which, but we'll find out. So we're just going to say yes and no. Can we use this? All inputs must have a unique ID. I just say yes here, no here as well.
Yeah, that's how it panned out yesterday, wasn't it? It seemed that the ID and the choice item were the same, which was really interesting. Title, value.
Title, value.
Let me refer to my flow because we had this challenge yesterday.
All inputs must have a unique ID. So that is okay. So yeah, that's because I figured out it's because we haven't set an ID, which means that this choice set essentially is just a control within this adaptive card. We've not given it anything to actually use to hold this data. So we can say an illness previously. That can be the ID for this. And then we were also missing one on the input text here, so we can say that these are the adjustments. It's got adjustments and illness previously. So I believe if I look at my my formulas, my JSON here, so we've got our text block, which is our big title. We've got our description title underneath. I'm not sure if that needs an ID too, but I don't think it does because we don't really need to retrieve any information from that. However, the text here, so any of the adjustments, the ID is what we're going to use to retrieve those adjustments. And we also have an ID here for illness previously. I think before this ID was just sat underneath type, but I don't think it really matters where it sits, to be honest. Okay, so we've got 2 ways to retrieve some information. In fact, I'm not sure where that's just disappeared to now I've closed that.
I love these tools. They're great. He says,
How do we expand what we've just minimized?
Just click on the card, perhaps, in the middle there, the preview mode. Does it pop up again? It doesn't, does it? Where's your JSON gone?
It's down at the bottom here. There we go.
Okay.
That's so yeah, we've got the card payload editor. Not sure what the card payload editor is, or the sample data editor. Okay, that's just some data that we don't need to worry about.
Yeah.
So we've got sample. We need the card payload editor. So this is actually what we want. So if we are happy with that, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to place this inside of our message. And then what we're going to do is, first of all, just test to make sure that this comes back as it should. So I'm just going to give our flow its first save. And we're going to go and test this manually. Now, I'm just going to see if we get anything back in Teams. Just closing down all the stuff you lot don't want to see in Teams. I'm waiting for something to come back in Teams as the Flowbot in my chat. So it's waiting for a response.
That should send to you. Should go to you. Oh, of course, you've got to do that first.
Are you ready to return to work? I need to collect responses and just go to this URL. So yes, I'm ready to return to work, and we'll go with today, and we'll just say submit. So I'm now looking at my Teams. Just bear with me, and I'll drag this onto the screen in a second. And let's see where we are in terms of our flow history. Okay, so I'm just going to move that to my my pinned. Just bear with me. Right. Okay, so we've got a card inside of Teams, which says basically everything that we saw inside of the adaptive card. So please write any adjustments that need to be made. What adjustments do we want to make, John?
Let's just put footstool, sake of
footstool.
argument. Yeah.
Is footstool?
Sure, it's not a footstool. It's a foot. There's a special word for it. Put new chair. New chair. Yeah. And okay, the placeholder text obviously needs to change because that is going to be the "Are you ready to return to work?" So yeah, that was going to be. Is this a reoccurrence or something like that? Would be yeah.
Yes, and the other thing that we're missing here is actually a way to submit this.
Submit, yes.
So we know that we need to make some adjustments to our flow.
Fan due to the heat, yeah.
I'm going to go back to our designer and we'll see what adjustments we need to make. So let's go and add our, I believe, we're looking for actions.
Yes, actions set.
What's I feel like there? It wasn't an action set.
No, the one that we have is in the previous example. If I can find Adele's previous, it's an action.submit. It just says actions. So yeah, where's that in yours?
So, yeah, where does that sit? I'm just wondering if it's because we didn't select the right. Something to do with the host app. Are we missing something here? Add an action. Okay, here we go. Okay. So add an action. It's a bit strange how it just doesn't sit over here. So we can say action submit. Not sure what the difference between submit and execute is. Because in kind of developer terms, they mean the same thing, surely. But we'll go with action.submit. And I'm assuming that we can change the ID of this, or we don't even need an ID, surely.
No, it's just the type and the title, I think, that we need for that one.
Okay, So let's have a look. We've got
the title is the title is the name that the button will be given. So yeah, send or submit.
And what was the placeholder for the
is this a reoccurrence? Something like that.
Is this a reoccurrence? I feel like I've spelled that wrong, but I don't think it matters. So is this a reoccurrence? And we've got our submit button there, which should just do what we want it to do. So let's copy that. It's a bit weird how it's placed the action underneath the final part of our schema, but I'm assuming that the designer knows best. And we'll paste that in and we can see that at the bottom there as well. It's a little bit zoomed in. So we'll go and test this. We should be able to just use the recently run trigger to do this. So when a new response is submitted, it's got the response, it's waiting for the new adaptive card. So you can say new chair and we'll say no, and then action.submit set. There's a bit of design changes we need to make to that, just to make that just say submit, and I think that'll just be under the title. So the response was sent to the app, which means if I come back to here, we should have. Okay, so yeah, it's picked up. Okay, that's for the adaptive card. So we've got the responder of the adaptive card, and you've got new chair and no, and that is surfaced inside of our data, which means that we've now got that information to go and do something. So yeah, what would your next step be there then, John?
So I think the only additional complexity, I think that encapsulates a single example of the use case that's been talked about. The only thing I think will be valuable to see if we can explore is, before that adaptive card gets sent, let's give the assessor some information from the form I'm going to say using an adaptive card, but I'm not entirely sure that's the right way. Is there a way you can surface an entire form set in Teams without going through adaptive cards, is what's going through my head. I know I can pop it into a SharePoint list. I know I could also send them, in fact, that's probably the easiest way, send them a Teams message with a link to the form that's just been submitted. That might be a quick way. But I love adaptive cards being in the flow of work. I don't have to go anywhere. That's what I like about them.
Okay, then. So
maybe we do that. Let's do an adaptive card with some dynamic content from the form.
Okay, we could include that as part of this adaptive card. Save them
could do,
receiving multiple cards.
Yeah, let's do that.
So let's spend a bit of time in the designer then. And then we can see what information we can replace afterwards. First, I'm just going to change this button to just say submit under the title. And then we could say return to work adjustments. And then we could say here 4.
Oh yeah,
and then I wonder if we can get back. Let's think.
We can put a placeholder in there, can't we, and replace that with dynamic content, I think.
Yes. So I'm just going to put a little note here, or a comment, where we're going to get the form responder, whoever that may be, and then we can replace that when we copy it over. So just for the sake of cleaning this up a little bit, we're going to just get rid of that big description at the top here. And we're going to make this look a little bit nicer. So we're going to add a text block just above this. And inside of here, we're going to ask the question. So we're going to say, are any adjustments needed for this employee to return to work? And then we're going to add a text block underneath this, and we can say, is this illness a well, I'm not spelling it right, but
it's ENCE, recurrence. I always do this. I think people should we should do away with I's, E's and A's basically, because they're always wrong when I put them into words like this. So it's recurrence, not recurrence. ENCE. That's it.
okay. Very strange.
I'm with you, Connor. I don't see those things, but I had a suspicion that was wrong.
Yeah, let's go and change that. And then in here, you can say the placeholder is please choose an option. And in here, you can just say that the placeholder is just right adjustments. Okay, so we want to also obviously include some information from the form. So the way we're going to do this, I think, is just using text blocks. I believe we could just use text blocks and then replace what the value is with that dynamic content that comes from the form response, or wherever it sits. Came from a list. We could do that as well. So we're just going to add a text block right at the top here. We could change the formatting, the sizing, and all of that sort of stuff of this. But inside of the text here, I'm going to say that. What questions did we ask? I've already forgotten. Okay, so are these suitable questions? If they're filling out this form, they're going to already know that they're ready to return to work. Otherwise, they wouldn't be filling out the form. So I think let's just quickly rework these questions a little bit so it fits. We could say, please
let us know your intent. Sorry, go on.
Please describe your illness.
Oof, GDPR.
Is it
personal data? But then again, I suppose you're assessing.
Yes.
You need to
Have
know
you
some
seen
details.
a doctor or visited a hospital during your time off? Can't even type. There we go. Oh, I hate my browser sometimes. So, have you seen a doctor or visited the hospital about your sickness? So there we go. That's a good yes or no. And I think that should be fine. That makes a little bit more sense now as to some of the information that we could provide to the person who is going through the assessment process, I think. So we could say, let's have a look under this text block here. What we're going to say is, this is going to be the response to question 1. And what I'm going to do is just grab another text block, and inside here, this is going to be the response to question 2. So what I'm actually doing here is I'm just kind of building this in a kind of pseudo code format, just so when I then go to implement it, I know where I need to place data and all that sort of stuff. And I kind of use comments to do that with this double // It's just a habit of mine. But it allows you to then really kind of see where things need to go. So we've got a bit of information, and we could then let's add a new text label underneath. Just to highlight this a little bit, we'll say that the font weight is going to be bold. And in here, we're going to say adjustments.
Yeah, that top one could be return to work detail, return to work submission.
Yes, so return to work submission.
And again, it's made me think a few other thoughts, but we'll see where we are for time.
Submission for form responder. Okay, so I'm happy with the way that looks now. Let's go and copy our new adaptive card JSON into here. And now let's look at populating this with some information. So the first one, so return to work submission 4. So let's see if we can just replace this with some dynamic content. So we're going response ID here. So I think what we actually need to do is we need to add an action. Let's go and find what we can grab from our form. So we need get response details. And then we can provide this with the form ID. I think we can just do dynamic.
Return to work. It was just on that list there, Connor.
Yeah, so the response ID and the form ID. Okay, so yeah, we need the return to work sickness form, where the response ID is whatever comes from this trigger here. And then with that, we can then have a look at the responders. We've got the responders email. That should do for now.
You could always do a lookup prior to that, couldn't you? You could do a compose and get the full name or something.
Yeah, if we've got time, we can maybe look at that at the end.
Yep.
And then the text here is going to be the response to the first question, which is going to be this. So, has seen a medical professional. And then that should then just say yes or no. And then response to question 2 needs to go inside of here. And I'm assuming that we do need to keep the double quotes, keep with that JSON format.
Yeah, I think so. We've had this before, haven't we, where when you combine dynamic content and JSON, the formatting, you have to be really careful with it because JSON expects certain characters to do certain things. So it'd be interesting to see if this works.
I have a feeling we're going to get some really strange date results, but we'll leave it as that for now. So I have a feeling this is going to work, and we're just going to start implementing the rest of this flow. So what I'm actually just going to do is I'm just going to do a parse JSON, just as we did yesterday. In fact, I'm going to need to get the results for that first. So we'll go run with the. In fact, we'll have to do a new submission because we changed the schema of this. So let's go and refresh this and say, yes, I've seen a medical professional and I'd like to return today. Submit. And let's see what we get back. Get a list of response details.
It's all right with the date, isn't it?
It's now going to send me an adaptive card. So we can see, yeah, we got a short date there, which for the moment's fine. I've seen a medical professional, yes. Are there any adjustments need to be made? So yeah, we're going to say stand-up desk.
Well, that's a good idea, Connor. I'm going to stand up.
Is this illness a reoccurrence? We'll say yes, and we will submit that. Thank you for your response. You're very much welcome. Let's go back to our flow and see what we have in here. So yeah, we've got our data, which means that we can now grab this body. So I'm going to copy this body because this is what I'm going to use as the schema for our parse JSON, where we can then add a new step. I'm just going to do a compose. Sorry, no, it's not a compose. We need a parse JSON. That's what we need. And the content's going to come from. Now, interesting, we don't have the body for our adaptive card. I'm just gonna pop that into there, and it's asking for content, but we don't have the body from our adaptive card. Now, why don't we have that?
Oh, I think I know what we might be missing. Don't we have to create, literally take the body next into a compose and then pass the JSON from that body, if that makes sense? I'm looking back to what we did yesterday, and there was a thought process that led us to compose, put the data in from the adaptive card, and then pass the JSON from the compose.
Course.
Yeah, that sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Is go and get that bit and then pass that bit. Yeah.
However,
that's interesting.
Again,
why you
still
do
not
need
getting
that,
any.
No, you're not here.
Any data
No
from
post
here,
adaptive card,
which is very strange. What we can do, and this is something that I've done before, which sometimes works, is I'm going to go and look at. I'll just quickly on an open notepad and just see what that looks like. So we're getting the body from the get response details. So what I'm just going to do is
yeah, change it.
Post. I think capitalization is important here.
So you're going to basically force it with that expression to go and get whatever body is there, even though dynamically it's not showing you. That's clever.
Yeah. It needs to be an expression, I believe. It's invalid expression.
It would be the body. We're missing the body. I'm just going to go and have a look at my compose because I have an example. Let's peek code. It's the outputs that you're missing. So in that expression, you were right. It's at outputs and then in brackets, post adaptive card and wait for a response. That's the effective code of the. I'll paste it into the chat.
Yeah, go on.
Saves you a bit of time. It's got opera. Not sure this is going to work, but try it anyway. Right, so try this.
It's great that you get to see us trying to fix what shouldn't be a problem, but turns out to be. So we've got an at outputs.
That still doesn't feel quite right. Yeah, because I'll show you the whole thing. This is what I've got as my whole thing, right? Make of that what you will. So it's the input to this is the outputs from the post adaptive card and wait for response, and the body / data, and the metadata's got the operation ID.
It's overly complex.
It does, doesn't it? I would just say like save it, reopen it, and see if it's there. That just seems really odd.
That's a good shout. We're going to do that.
Because it should just find it.
Content is required, right? Let me just get rid of that. We'll go and save our flow and give it a refresh. And we've lost everything.
Oh, I've had this before. Yeah, it's power automation playing silly devils.
So let's go and say pass JSON again and see if this just works. Before we do the pass JSON, let's just see if we actually have an error because we've not tested this yet.
Yeah, something's not right, is it? It's a good learning point as well, and that you get something working and you think you'll go and do something which is relatively routine and simple, and in putting a bit of dynamic content in, we've created ourselves more work.
So just gonna say something here, and yes, we're going to submit
it all works, doesn't it?
So let's go back to our History.
Did we update the schema? I know you haven't put that in yet, have you? That's what you were just
Yeah,
doing.
schema would be part of the past JSON.
Yeah. So that's your schema that you need, the outputs from the adaptive card.
Yes, so this is the schema that we actually want. So we all see that we are getting a body that's coming back from this, but why can't we surface it? Let's go and edit. I'm gonna do it just to compose. I feel like I'm just running around in circles here. How bizarre.
That is genuinely odd. And
We are getting something back as an output. We saw that under that raw output. It's really reassuring to see you working through this process and experiencing the same kind of frustrations we face all the time. Yeah, usually you don't see dynamic content because something's slightly misaligned in terms of where items sit in your flow, but this is such a simple linear flow. There's no branches off it. There's no containers like apply to eaches that are happening in here. So I shouldn't really be expected to see this. Can you try search? Might pop up there. Yeah, that's a good shout. Let's have a look at outputs. If I can type. So we've got nothing like that. So we've got no post. I can't type, can I?
I'm just going to do the same on my flow yesterday, and we'll do a compare and contrast, see what it is that we are doing wrong or different.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I I have essentially exactly the same flow as you. I don't have the form triggers, but that should be irrelevant. That doesn't make any difference. I have the post adaptive card action, and right after it I have a compose, and the dynamic content says post adaptive card and wait for a response. That is I wonder the difference here is we just put dynamic content into it. I wonder whether that's caused any. Just remove those 3 bits of dynamic and we'll see what. I mean, this is just total guesswork. That's really interesting, isn't it? There's nothing else there that would be. Oh, do you know what it could be? Could it? No. Again, thinking out loud, but I don't think it's this. Was you noted that the schema was sort of part way through the JSON, and whether that's just created an error that's not been surfaced. So putting the schema last again, I don't know. Try both.
Let's go and grab this action then.
I mean, there's no reason, but if that is disrupting that action without us really seeing it, then perhaps it would affect dynamic content.
Let's go and remove that action from there.
Yeah,
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, you can always ask ChatGPT if not.
Yeah, let's do that. ChatGPT, I'm not on Edge.
If you want, ping it into chat and I'll just quickly ChatGPT check it.
There you go. That is the formula.
For those of you yesterday who may not have ever experienced doing this, it's like having a really intelligent best friend sat next to you. You can just go to Bing and it'll do it, or you go to OpenAI in the ChatGPT service and say, "Is this JSON correct?" and then paste it in, and it's ridiculous how good it is. Is this JSON correct?
Let's go run another test.
At first glance, it seems mostly correct. However, there seems to be a small mistake in the structure. The actions field is currently nested inside the body, which is likely unintended, and it's just corrected it for me. So I can repaste what it's given me if you'd like it.
Go on, let's give it a try.
We'll give it a try, because I do wonder sometimes you get this, don't you? You've hit it on the head. If you have an error in the action somewhere, the dynamic content tends to be affected, and that's what's made me think. I've corrected the spelling of professional for you. I didn't ask you that, but you clever dick. 1 F, 2 S's. Right, okay. Right, here you go.
It's me speed typing, or trying to speed type.
Yeah, but ChatGPT just did that without me asking. The world's become sentient. Right, go for it. That's your text block there to paste into JSON.
Oh,
You have to get rid of John Mandeville at the top.
yeah, I see that.
I mean, I think it will sort that. It should do.
Yeah, let's give that a save. And let's give that a test using the recently used trigger. Let's go and just say hello. Here's a recurrence. We've got our submission response. Is it doing something? Okay, so we're actually getting more back now than we had before, I think.
Yeah.
It looks like the action, I think it's to do with that action then. So the action being placed underneath. And what I'm going to do, just so for my own sanity,
Yeah,
I'm going to use
beautify that JSON.
JSON beautifier.
Yep,
Because
I'm with you on that.
I can't
It is
understand
troubling to look at, isn't it?
It is. Let's go and place that. Beautify this for me. Oh, thank you very much. That looks
That's much
a lot
nicer, isn't it? That's very pleasing. Like,
just paste that into there. Okay, so where has it placed that action? So
it's got rid of the schema, hasn't it?
yeah, it's placed the schema at the top.
Okay, well, fair enough. It's a bit like JavaScript, isn't it? That likes to know its schema before it begins, or likes to know its library
And then
before
we've
it
got
begins.
actions at the bottom. So we've got something back now. At least ChatGPT knows what it's doing.
Oh yeah, no, this is great.
Even if we somewhat know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So,
but
now,
honestly, that's quite transformative for me, though. I wanted to sort of dwell on that because there's twice now in 2 days where there's been the tiniest little bug in JSON, and I'm not saying it's going to work. Well, it's worked, right?
Yeah.
The only other thought I've got, Connor, is it could be because we have dynamic contents. We still need to put that back in. But
yes, so
twice now, it's been our best friend. So I'm going to recommend it.
Respond as email. We want the first question in there. And then inside of those double quotes, we'll have the second one in there. And let's see.
Let's see if that breaks it.
It does break it.
That's
very bizarre. So I think this is what I'm going to do. Is I am. So if I can get rid of my bar at the top, I'm going to do a Google search because Google is always our friend. I'm going to say, can we add dynamic content to adaptive cards in Power Automate? What do we have? Post an adaptive card with dynamic content. That sounds exactly like what we're looking for.
Okay, right. Oh, here you go.
Go on.
So you can. No, Matt, I'm going up against you with ChatGPT here. You can indeed use dynamic content with an adjacent structure, but there are a few things to consider. Placeholders for dynamic content. When constructing your JSON within Power Automate, you'll use expressions or select from the dynamic content. In the designer, this typically looks to be represented with tokens wrapped in curly braces.
Yeah, so that is similar to the way we were just trying to do that outputs thing, and then the body, and we were just trying to manually change it. So that's what that means, I think, with the curly braces there.
Yes. Can you just zoom in a little bit, please, Connor, if that's okay on your screen?
Yeah, I think I know what we're talking about now. So I think it's because we've got double quotes here.
Yes.
And we're trying to wrap something inside of here. So my thought is that we need to maybe, in fact, let me try something. Can you do me a favor? I'm going to copy this over with the dynamic content, which should copy that over as, yes, it does. Okay, so I'm going to send this over to you. I want you to tell me if ChatGPT can help me with this. So that formula I've just sent you is the JSON that we have with the dynamic content in its readable format.
Okay, shall I try and correct that?
So let's see, because I have a feeling it's going to ask for like a single quote somewhere or something just to symbolize that that is dynamic content. Because obviously Jason has no context of dynamic content at this point.
Right. It seems mostly correct. The primary content review are the expressions within the text fields which you are intending to extract data from a previous step. Assuming you've... Okay. It might be, if you're encountering issues, it might be due to a few potential reasons. Expression syntax, data availability, field matching. It's not actually given me anything back. Let me just say, I'm going to change the question. I just wrote, correct this JSON, and then pasted it. I'm going to say, is this JSON correct? In terms of the structure, it appears correct. However,
Giving you the same response, isn't it?
the sections and properties are set in a way that is consistent with the adaptive card schema. Ensure that get response details is a valid action name in your flow. Confirm that the paths. Yeah, it's not really helped me, interestingly.
Okay, let's have a look.
So we're going to have to go with manual.
What blog post? The view solution in original post. What do we have in here? I'm trying to use the parrot post. That's exactly what we're using. However, I can't seem to edit the JSON data to allow for dynamic content. Has anyone had any success with this? Check out this blog. Okay, that blog is dead.
And this is
work.
where time gets spent, isn't it, Connor?
Yes.
You go off down a little rabbit hole.
I think it's important that we try and solve this because I mean,
Yeah,
if
I
you
agree.
can place dynamic content into an adaptive card, kind of gives
Syntax.
You very unlimited possibilities that you could use them for.
Yeah. While you do that, I'm going to think in a different angle about what I might do. No, because you can place dynamic.
Okay, so
yeah, okay. I'm not going
they're
to go
using
that way.
single quotes to wrap this in, so we're going to give that a try. We're going to give this a try.
Why do you need the double quotes, do you think?
So double quotes is because that is the syntax of retrieving a value.
Okay.
From the specified property. And I think single quotes is because this is going to highlight that this is a piece of formula in some respect. Because that's essentially what dynamic content is behind the scenes. It is that weird kind of formula that you see. And if you look at that formula behind the scenes, like I say, when I copied and pasted that, you've got all of this kind of open and closed brackets. And I think what's happening is the JSON syntax is trying to read that as part of the JSON syntax formula, whereas it's actually not. This is dynamic content.
Yeah.
So we're going to try this. And I don't know if this is going to work.
It's not, is it?
Content is required, schema is required. Okay, let's get rid of that. Just give this a quick save. And then the other thing that somebody was saying was that you can use, I believe it's this symbol, which is the kind of slanted one by the looks of it. I think that was the one that lady used on her forum post. So let's go and change that. Let's go try another pass, Jason. No, we're not retrieving what we would like. Let's see what other options people are saying on here.
Yeah, I'm just doing the same, having a look. I've probably got to the same blog post as you, actually.
Okay, so create dynamic adaptive cards and teams use Power Automate. So this is what we would like. So they're not adding any dynamic data at this point. They're just using hard written values for now. Dynamic adaptive cards. So what have they got in here? Okay, so this again doesn't really look like what we're after. Yeah, I don't really think that's what we're after. So how to write dynamic content in an adaptive part in Power Automate. I wonder if the designer can actually help us with this, because I noticed that there's a data context here. And I wonder if, for example, we was to say that the form responder, so we've got the text here. So yeah, we can add, and I think these are just attributes to create, so we've got the creator, is there an email? Let's just see what happens when we just type in, so root.creator name. So let's see how that appears inside of here. So the text, the actual text to display. So it's something like this that we actually need, and it seems to be using like the pound symbol, dollar symbol, to do this. So that is a string. If we wanted an object, okay, so it's still using that sort of formula. This is an interesting issue with adaptive cards not allowing dynamic content. Okay, so she's got dynamic content in this one, which
That
is
doesn't have
basically
the double quotes. It's really small, Connor. I can't read that. Could you
yeah.
just
So
zoom in on
it
that?
does have the double quotes. So this is
Oh, it
her
does.
issue. This is her issue. This isn't actually how it's solved, but this is essentially what we've tried, and it's the same sort of thing that
It is.
Hugh over here is asking. So what are the accepted solutions? If you have multiple actions, you should write them all in one actions. Okay. See what
that's
this
just
looks like.
that's just about the formatting for different actions. So there's a submit and an open URL, but that's not the solution to our problem, is it? I don't think.
No.
But
However,
that said,
however,
there you go.
okay, so that's the similar sort of thing that we have tried already. That is what we placed in there.
Yeah, that is what you want, isn't it? It's the we didn't do curly brackets before the outputs, did we? I wonder if that syntax is very particular.
Yeah, I'm just seeing what else we have. If you have actions, if you have multiple actions, you should write them all in one actions. Okay, so
to do with the structure that
we do have multiple actions.
we don't, do we? We have one action, which is a submit.
Yes.
Or do we? We have multiple inputs.
We have multiple inputs
and one action.
Okay, so I'm just going to grab this line because
yeah, we'll just substitute that. Is it just me, as just an aside, is it just me, or do those, when it says go to solution, do you often find it confusing as to where the actual solution is on those community posts? It may just be me.
I very rarely use it. I kind of look at the forum. If it doesn't look like it's what I need, I'm gone. It doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
So let's try just first of all.
Oh, it's so interesting, George. Just while you do that, Connor, George just said create a string variable, place that in your adaptive card, and update the variable before the card posts. I was wondering whether it was because you can't access the dynamic content. It doesn't render it in that way from the form. So I had thought, oh, what if you put it into a compose, turn it into a string, and put that into the adaptive card? But to my brain, I went, that's exactly the same thing. But you've just suggested it works. So that's interesting. We'll go back to that next.
Just going to grab a compose quickly just so I can get this as a raw format.
It's like turn that into text.
Yep, so I'm going to copy that. And I'm just going to remove that and we'll see what happens. So that is in the same format, I believe. We've got our outputs. We've got the name of the action. And then we're getting the individual piece of information from the action, which is the body link, web URL. And what we're getting is the body responder. I wonder if we add this in. Okay, so we can't add it like that. I'm just going to try and add this without using dynamic content and just paste it in. Okay, it just copies it as dynamic content. So no matter whether you copy this as text or not, it will just place that in as dynamic content.
So how about George's suggestion? I'm not entirely sure of the reason this would be, but what about experimenting with basically grabbing that piece of data and changing it into the output of a compose, which is a string. You make it into a string before you go to the post adaptive card. Just interested to see whether that changes it in any way. That's the suggestion it might do. So it'd be compose, or a variable. Of course, you could do a variable.
We're going to initialize a variable.
Okay.
Call this bar responder email. Yeah. And this is going to be type string. And I suppose we could just initialize it with a value.
Yep. And then it's that we pass in and get rid of everything else.
Yes.
Have a vote in chat. Yes, you think this is going to work. No, you don't. So you're seeing it, isn't it? You're seeing that. Yeah, that's the difference, isn't it?
Okay, so let me just remove this dynamic content for now, and we can always come back and add this. And let's see if so we don't get what we want. So, let me just let's go ahead and save my flow a second. It might need to run first. I have a feeling that there's something that see what happens when we test this.
You may just need to zoom. Oh, I've zoomed in on you because I've used control of my mouse wheel there. Silly me.
Let's go and should be waiting for a new. Okay, initialize variable. We've got our email address.
Yeah, what's that doing now?
Progress failed. 92 position 11. Item is not an object. Item is not an object. So where are we? Line string path line 2 position 11. Let's go have a look.
It's that, isn't it?
just going to test this once more. Okay, so it failed without the dynamic content too.
Yeah, we've broken something, haven't we?
I'm on position 11. That's because I just moved it up. So I have a feeling I've got something in here which shouldn't be in here. Let me just put some text in here. Just make sure there's nothing to do with that. If you guys could just bear with me, I've got somebody at the door, and I'll be right back. So yeah, apologies for that, but yeah, we've got something wrong with our formula. So
Would you like to ChatGPT it again very quickly? Seems to be a quick way to spot simple syntax.
yeah, let's go for it. I'm gonna pop that into chat again. So I've got no dynamic content in here, so I don't now know why we're still running into problems. I feel like we may have changed something somewhere.
Yes, I think we
That
have.
always seems to be the case. What do we have? So I just want to quickly point out we are coming towards the end of the session. I know obviously we ran into a few issues, but that's not to say that we can't look at this during next week's live. Maybe
Yeah,
hopefully we'll find something and be able to show it off a little bit.
yeah, I mean, sorry, Connor, I keep cutting over you. The only thing I think is really challenging is putting the dynamic content into the adaptive card, and there's a number of ways you could get around that, isn't there? Is there? I mean, you can post data to Teams. You could compose a message effectively, a simple message, and pop it into Teams to say, "Hey, you've just received this form submission," and then next follow up with an adaptive card. But I'm sure you can get dynamic content into it somehow. Let me just give you one example back. One try back.
Yeah,
It's done the whole. You need to beautify it again. It's done the whole concatenation thing.
I can do that. I've got to close down my.
I mean, it's not. It's just said it provided a cleaned up version. It does say it's not picked out any particular problems.
Let's get rid of.
See what that does.
Right, let's save and test.
There we go. So I know this is where it breaks, isn't it?
No, so it's said me now.
Okay. I wonder whether it was that absence of a gap between your speech marks. Jason is effectively doing something with that.
Yeah. Right. So
now we need to put the dynamic back, don't we?
why can't we get hold of this data? This is very confusing. So now let me try and put that string into here. We'll give that a test. So it's looking promising.
Has it put the name in? Because that's what we're looking for.
I've got my email address.
Yeah, it's done it. So okay, so that bit's worked.
Okay, so it looks like we have to set variables for our data.
But
Which
can
is a
you
bit
pass
odd.
the JSON now? That
It's a
seems
good
really
question.
strange, doesn't it? Yeah, that was
I
the
have a
original
feeling
reason.
that this pass JSON isn't going to work because it's got some form of dynamic content. Of course it has. However,
So how would you do that?
it is strange that if I was to remove that, and then I still okay. Now I do.
Yeah, it's
Bear with. I think I'm being. I wonder if got an idea. We are going to grab the data, or is it the body? Might be just the data we need, and we're going to use that schema. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly come back to make Power Automate. Just go to my run history. And
we have a hand up. I was transfixed. Emmanuel has a hand up.
Okay.
Pop your question into chat, or I can try and enable your mic if you're happy to speak. I'm going to enable your mic, and feel free to say hello. You're probably on mute, or type it into chat if you have a question.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm now going to try. I'll respond to email. Inputs is required. Let's just go and grab the adjustments. I think I've solved the problem in the weirdest way, the very strangest of ways, a way that it really shouldn't happen like this. But I think I've solved it, and we're going to find out because I'm going to go and test this again. So adjustments. What are the adjustments?
New chair.
Better
New
Power
brain.
Automate. I will say yes.
Yeah, better power. I want better Power Automate. That's not as confusing. It's only in these edge cases, isn't it? But it does stuff that's highly logical.
And I should see. Passing of the JSON. The body, we're getting that. Click to download output. What is my output? It's strange how I can't see my output. So, why can't I see my output? I'm going to try one more step. And instead of composing here, I am just going to let's go teams. Let's say
post.
I want to send me a message with the output. Where is it? Post message in chat or card. Okay, so we're going to post this as the Flowbot and post in chat with Flowbot. So it should just send me the message. Recipient, I'm just going to put me for now. Okay, not sure where that went. There we go. And then the message is just going to be, I want my pass from my past JSON. I just want to get my adjustments and my illness previously. And I'm just going to test this to see if this works. Okay, so we're waiting for my adjustment. Another weird adjustment. Is this illness a reoccurrence? Yes. Submit. Now what I'm expected to see is Power Automate to type me a message, which it has done, but it's blank.
Oh,
so I tried to cheat my way around this by essentially not having anything in the dynamic content, using the past JSON, then getting all the values that I needed. So if I kind of show you, as part of my past JSON, I was able to get the data because there was no values in this, and then I added my dynamic content afterwards. And again, it looks like we've got issues, and I can't figure it out because we know that we don't have issues, because when the form comes to us, we are seeing when the adaptive card comes to us, we are seeing the email address that is appearing. So we know that that dynamic content that we're putting in works. It then just struggles to, I mean, let's have a look. Let's have a look at our run history and really kind of dive into maybe what is sitting at the bottom of this. Let's go to our run history. So yeah, we're getting a blank message that's coming back from this. Our past JSON is getting the content that we need. The only thing I can think of. I think I may know what's happened here. So that is generate from sample. Bear with me. I'm going to have a look at the schema here. It's coming back. So we are getting the stuff that we need. I'm going to copy that schema, which I think I've already done.
Yeah.
So we now have the schema. However, the content, we actually need the body. So let's go and have a look again. I've got to remove this to be able to get this, which is a bit weird.
I'm convinced that's something in the way that you insert it. It has to have some special characters around it to stop it treating it almost as a string which it can't interpret. That's something I'm going to play with offline.
This time I'm grabbing the body rather than the data. Now let's go and put our dynamic content back in here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to test this, hopefully for what is the last time. So it's going to send us an adaptive card. We can see we got the emails coming through. So we know the dynamic content is working. And let's go 1, 2, 3, and we'll say yes. And we'll press submit. And we should see. Now we're getting the 1, 2, 3, yes. So yeah, I mean, to explain this, I mean, hopefully I've not kind of rushed through that in a way that you've not really understood what's happened there. Is if I go and take a look at my flow, what seems to happen is obviously this initialized variable, it does work, but no matter what type of dynamic content you put in here, whether it's straight from the form or you're initializing a variable and setting it from a variable or a compose, as soon as you add dynamic content to this adaptive card, the rest of the flow seems to want to fall over. So you're unable to retrieve the body, which is basically what's coming from this adaptive card. However, if you build this without any dynamic content in, then you pass your JSON to be able to get a list of the individual results. Then you go back and add your content. That seems to be the method that works, which actually leads me to think that we don't actually need this initialized variable, and we can try this with the responder's email. And we'll see if that works.
Yeah, you can just leave that variable in, can't you, and just not use it.
We're going to see if this works, because that would answer the other question that we had. So let's go and give this a test. Okay, so it seems to be doing something. It's allowing us to test it, which is always a good sign. And we're going to say that this one is going to be adjustments. We'll say cloud 365. And is this illness a reoccurrence? We say no, we'll press submit. And we do get the response back. So yeah, we don't need the variable. However, it did help us get to the solution that we needed. But yeah, very strange behavior, and I'm not sure why that happens, but that seems to be the only way around it.
Oh, well done.
Is to pass your JSON and then put in your dynamic content.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to kind of Natalie's solution there, just before we kind of close off this this live stream. I mean, I know that we didn't really get to the whole approval process here, but the point being about this whole kind of thing is that we have a response coming in. We're getting the response details. We're then creating an adaptive card where we can then pass in those response details. But again, we got to do that after we do this next node, which is the parse JSON next action. So we're doing the parse JSON. We're getting the schema from a run of the previous 3 nodes or actions. We're getting our schema, and then that way with that schema we can surface individual pieces of information from that adaptive card, which means that you could then go and place that information inside, for example, a SharePoint list to update it. In terms of the approval process, I'm guessing that you probably put this after the parse JSON.
Yeah.
So you're basically posting a response, you're doing whatever you need to do with that response, and then it's going through the approval process of actually whatever the decision is that you want to make. I mean, hopefully that's covered your use case. If you've got any more questions about that, Natalie, then just share them with us. We'll have a look at them perhaps next week. But yeah, I think just due to time and obviously fixing bugs, but hopefully you've enjoyed our process of fixing bugs. I know it can be tedious, but yeah, I think we're going to call it there. And
yeah, it's brilliant, Connor. Honestly, you never cease to amaze me the way that you sort of think through these problems and that logical process. So I'm confident that people will have seen your brain whirring there and gone, that's a good, I'll try that next time. So yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. It's really
you're
good.
welcome. Yeah, thanks for being here as well, John. It's actually really useful to bounce ideas off each other, because I think we have very kind of similar mindsets in terms of we have a process that we want to get from start to finish, and even though our process is, I think, is slightly different in terms of the way we approach diagnosis of problems, I think bouncing those kind of different ways of doing that off each other is a great way to get to an end solution. Because I know that,
So
for example, when I had the issue with the date formatting, the JSON formatting and stuff, I probably wouldn't have been able to fix that for really a good few hours trying to figure out where my commas were and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's very useful to bounce ideas off each other. But yeah,
great.
more importantly as well, thanks to everybody that has joined in on this live session. It's been great to see your guys' input into this as well, which again is very helpful. Your suggestions to help us diagnose these problems as well is obviously what gets us to an end goal. And I think the more people working on a problem, obviously the quicker it gets solved. So yeah, again, if you have any problems of your own, feel free to share them in the academy. And yeah, I think we'll call it there. And enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have you got anything else to add there, John?
No, just have a fab weekend, and we'll hopefully see if you're interested in watching another session. I think you're doing a it's building a game in Power Apps, isn't it, on Monday on the watch party, and that's 2 p.m. UTC. So just a reminder, really go and check the events list, RSVP, so we know you're coming, and we'll see hopefully some of you on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you, Connor. It's great.
Yeah, that watch party is quite interesting. Interested to see how Power Apps is going to be used outside of a business case and can actually be used to make a game, which kind of excites me a little bit. Okay, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.